Blog Talk Radio. Good evening and welcome to House Talk with Dr. Lauren Pitts. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Pitts. Tonight, Dr. Gregory Williams, no stranger to House Talk, is back. If you joined us earlier this year and last October, you know that Dr. Gregory Williams has a PhD in counseling and is a well-known speaker and teacher. Dr. Williams, I have to tell you, I am thrilled and honored to have you back on House Talk.
It's great to be here tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm just so excited that you're back. And in that, though, I have to ask you, how have the book signing tours been going for your new book, Shattered by the Darkness, Putting the Pieces Back Together After Child Abuse?
You know, it's going really well. Better than I expected because you never know if anybody's going to buy the book or not. But it's going well, and I'm traveling all over the country, and we have it in every Barnes & Noble bookstore now all over the country. So you can literally, in Chicago or Los Angeles or Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C., just literally walk into the store and pick it up off the shelf. Or you can get it on Amazon and all the BarnesandNoble.coms and things. But the book signings are going well. I was in Clearwater Beach, Florida recently, Las Vegas last month. I'll be in Las Vegas again in a couple of weeks. I'll be in California, Seattle, and New Mexico coming up soon. So it's going really well. I'm enjoying meeting the people.
Nice. So listeners, Shattered by the Darkness is a must-read, and I wholeheartedly recommend sharing it with adult family members and friends.
I appreciate that. And, you know, this is kind of a special time anyway of the year. As we went into the month of April, this is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and letting people know about it, making them aware of the horrific pain of child abuse. And listeners, you all know, if you're listening to this radio show right now, House Talk, which is an awesome show, Dr. Pitts is literally a champion of strengthening families one solution at a time. And with that comes her personal embrace of protecting the kids, protecting the well-being of our children. Sometimes, Dr. Pitts, you do that one at a time, and sometimes you do it via the radio in these podcasts and the radio show and with your speaking engagements also. So all month, I'm excited to be here because we're going to discuss how we can raise awareness and take those necessary steps and important steps to protect, preserve the well-being of our youth. And we want all the listeners tonight to pull out a notepad and an ink pen, jot down the phone number, call us, and write some notes down because you're going to learn some awesome things and get involved in what it is to be part of the solution of this problem that's devastating our world and our country specifically.
Absolutely. You know, we have an information-packed show tonight, and of course, we want to hear from you, the listening audience. To join the conversation or to ask a question, please call 515-605-9744. That's 515-605-9744. And I also want to share with you the National Child Abuse Hotline. That's 1-800-422-4453. Again, that's 1-800-422-4453 for the National Child Abuse Hotline. So let's go ahead and get started because we know this time goes by really fast.
It sure does.
You know, right? It's like, where'd the time go? Tonight, our subject is raising awareness, steps to improve the well-being of children. So, Dr. Williams, what is child abuse and neglect, and why is it so prevalent in our society today?
You know, it seems like a lot of people just broad brush child abuse and neglect. You know, obviously child abuse is the physical hurting of one of our children, but it includes so much more than just that. It includes mental injury, emotional injury that absolutely affects their growth development, their psychological functions. It's causing a child or permitting the child to be in a situation where a child is going to get hurt or has the increase of injury. So child abuse can actually be something as simple as, but as horrific as, allowing your kid to play in the street on a busy street. Parents just don't do that. I mean, so that also can be a part of child abuse. Failure to make a reasonable effort to prevent harm, just an absolute neglect of that. And then obviously things that have happened to me like sexual abuse or failure to prevent sexual abuse, putting them in situations to where they know, we hear all these stories of human trafficking and parents allowing their children to be used for payment of rent or whatever. Or then also just literally encouraging child to engage in conduct that could be harmful. Now, the difference between that and neglect is neglect is, at least from my perspective, and I'm probably not going to be able to cover all of it, but it's a failure to provide a child's basic needs. Physical, educational, emotional, medical. And I think when you do that, neglect can enter in. And a lot of people think that poverty and neglect are the same thing. And it is not. You can live in poverty
and
but still not neglect your children. Absolutely, because there are resources out there, and you can take care of those kids just because you live in a bad environment or economic situation. It doesn't mean that gives you the right to abuse or neglect your children.
That's right.
And why is it prevalent in our society? Because our society is, I think personally, and I want you to jump in on this, Dr. Pitts. I think personally we are self-centered. I think parents sometimes are so interested in their life anymore that they put the kids in an environment that they don't watch them in the way they should. In the state of Texas anyway, if I wanted to cut your hair or dye your hair, I had to have a license. To do that, a state license.
Wow.
If I want to be a parent, all I have to do is find someone that wants to have a child with me. There's no training. There's no mandate. And we have to change that. Our parents need education.
They absolutely do, Dr. Williams. And, in my line of work as a family therapist, there's days where I just want to bang my head on the wall because,
I bet.
The reality of it is we take a step back sometimes and we say, how on God's green earth did some of these individuals end up with children? Well, we know there's a variety of reasons why people ended up with children, right? But one of the things that I think that contributes to child abuse and neglect being so prevalent in our society is that the nuclear family is broken down, right? So we have a lot of single parent homes out there. We have, just more incarceration in this country than any other country in the world. Poverty, illiteracy, and that list could, like you said, do we even have enough time to cover it all? That list could go on and on and on and on and on. But the harsh reality of it is all of these things can be variables that contribute to our children and our youth being abused and neglected. And it's heartbreaking. It is absolutely earth-shattering to me when I think about these children, these innocent babies who didn't ask to be brought into this world. And my son and I often say that, I swear to Goshen, that the people north of the Mason-Dixon line believe in using birth control. And I get it, that we can argue that, Christian beliefs and reproduction rights and all of that. But at the end of the day, Why are you having children just to abuse and neglect them? It frustrates me to no end, and it makes our work as clinicians so hard because, as you touched on in the very beginning, there's so many other issues that come into play that oftentimes don't get addressed, that make these children who didn't ask to be here menaces to society, right? It's just a mess, and it's this vicious cycle. And you said it best. We have to break it. We have to do some things differently. And it's just, as a society, it's just not happening. I just wanted to share some stats real quick with our listeners so that our listeners can get a true perspective of just how serious this national problem is. Dr. Williams, every year, every single solitary year, more than 3.6 million referrals are made to child protection agencies involving more than 6.6 million children. The United States has one of the worst records among industrialized nations, losing an average between 4 and 7 children every day to child abuse and neglect. That's the equivalent of a report of child abuse every 10 seconds. That's sickening to me. It is absolutely sickening.
Yeah, and you know, Dr. Pitts, I wonder how, I mean, those are reported cases.
Right.
What's happening behind closed doors that we as a society aren't even aware of, that happen in families like mine that never would have known that that the horror was happening behind those doors in that type of house with that type of family. But it was. But these are cases that you're just giving us the stats on of ones that are reported. So the numbers have to be astronomical. If you take all the people and the children that are abused. Well, Dr. Pitts, with those statistics that you have, what can we do to protect? What's some of the things, the protective factors that parents can use to help them strengthen their families? Because I think, let me regress a little bit. Do you feel that there's a cycle of the next generation are those children that have been abused themselves, and there's a breakdown now as each generation comes on in the family closeness, in the family protection, the pattern of what a family should be? Do you feel like every generation it starts breaking down even more?
I do. I think that it deteriorates from generation to generation because it's not being addressed, right? It reminds me of one of the previous shows you were on where you were talking about all of the abuse that you were subjected to and how your aunt and uncle were so instrumental in providing some semblance of safety and security and stability for you, that when you would be able to spend quality time with them. And that leads me remembering that brings me to the first point. Dr. Williams, nurturing and attachment is key. It's like, and here's the challenge with that. Like, it's definitely a solution in that parents have to learn how to properly nurture and to be attached to their children in age-appropriate, healthy ways. The flip side of that, though, is when you take into consideration that the age of these parents is getting younger and younger and younger, and like you said, people aren't being parented properly. There's no, handbook on how to parent. So how can you raise a child properly when you weren't raised properly, and thus you don't know how to do it? So that nurturing and attachment really means that parents, particularly those who, excuse me for being direct, have enough sense to recognize that there was something really wrong with how they were raised. It's like, wait a minute, this is unhealthy. This is, There's something off with this. They need to take time to reach out to the resources, as you so clearly stated, that are available within their communities or their surrounding community, so that they can properly learn how to nurture and attach to their children in healthy ways. We've got to find ways to engage with our kids and still be able to complete everyday tasks like preparing meals or shopping or driving or whatever the case may be. Stay off the cell phones, get rid of the electronic devices, and actually attach to the kids. The other thing that I think that's really key to these protective factors is really having being deliberate and intentional in having a better understanding of parenting and child development. And here's the news flash. Parenting is part natural, but it's also part learned. And sometimes you don't know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. But there may be some people around you that you can look at and be like, wait a minute, how their child behaves is kind of different than how my child behaves or how I'm doing things. And actually be willing to humble yourself and say, hey, look, there's room for some growth here. It's okay to explore and ask questions of your family doctor, because this is certain, right? In order for your child to be able to go to school, they have to have their shots. So people can't say, oh, well, I don't have a pediatrician. You should, or your child's not going to be able to go to school. So really having that protective factor in place and educating yourself about healthy parenting and child development, and also recognizing that every child is different. So we have to be careful not to parent them like their siblings. If you have more than one child, don't compare to kids. And the reason why I'm bringing these two things up is because creating the healthy attachment, the proper nurturing, and educating yourself about parenting and child development makes it easier for your child to talk to you if somebody is doing something to them. If they don't feel safe talking to you, stuff could be going on and you're oblivious to it.
Those are great.
The one more thing, too, that I just wanted to point out is, and this one is very, very key, the social and emotional competence piece of your children. When your children know that they are loved, they feel like they belong, and they feel like they matter enough for you to protect them and to care what is happening to them, it increases the likelihood that they will talk to you openly and honestly if someone is harming them. Or, let's keep it real, if the parent is the one that's bringing harm, but that child has other people in their life that make them feel safe and secure and stable and loved, the more likely they are to disclose that someone, even if it's a parent, is harming them.
Yeah, those are great points, and I tell you, I think in my case, what was going on in behind closed doors in my own home, it was a key that I had somebody outside of the house that gave me that stability. And I think you're going to start hearing words like trauma-informed hospitals, trauma-informed schools, trauma-informed communities, to where people are going to start being trained in the communities, in small groups around, to where they can actually become the type of neighborhood watch of, hey, if I see a child, I'm going to allow myself to not shoo them off my lawn, but just say, hey, how are you today? And make a connection. If you're a teacher, these teachers are with our children more than what the parents are. And I teach teachers so many times in workshops and conferences, and I love that they need to be aware they could be the very answer of the stability that this child will never receive at home. And they have to be able to have that stability somewhere else if they're not receiving it from their parents. And it's so important that they have that type of sensitivity.
Dr. Williams, I'm so glad you brought that up, because just last Friday, we had an incident here in Pennsylvania where a police chief was arrested for sexually abusing a child. And the child the child actually reported it to her teacher, who immediately went to the police and turned it in. So it goes beyond the fact that educators are mandated reporters. That child had enough comfort and stability to say, hey, I can go to teacher so-and-so and let them know that these horrible things are happening to me. And the teacher, thank goodness, did her due diligence in making sure that it got reported. And to add insult to injury, and it reminded me of what you've shared on previous shows, when it came down to it, not only was the police chief arrested, but it was actually one of the officers, too, that was joining him in abusing this child. Yeah, very, very powerful. So look, folks, you're listening to House Talk with Dr. Lauren Pitts. And listeners, we want to hear from you. So join the conversation. Time is ticking, but we still have time to hear your comments, your questions. Please call 515-605-9744. That's 515-605-9744. So, Dr. Williams, let me ask you this one last question. As time has flown already, and we're getting ready to start wrapping up to come to a close, what are the negative impacts of stress, and how can parents learn to manage it more effectively so that it sort of takes away the likelihood that they may abuse their children?
Yeah, this is the most upcoming research that I think the world is starting to become aware of, and that's ACEs, that adverse childhood, that trauma that comes on them during stress. And I think if you're a teacher, if you're somebody that knows a child, and toxic stress or neglect or abuse can affect the child in so many different ways. It can put a child in a fight, flight, or fright mode, which if they're one of those children that, and if you see any kind of abrupt change, for instance, they're always happy and go lucky, and then all of a sudden they become angry, they become rage-filled, or they become distrustful of adults, and it's a complete different child than it was. It doesn't mean call DCFS. It means open your eyes, your ears, and your sensitivity on that child, and start watching, start asking questions. Are you okay today? I notice you're kind of upset, and catch that. I think short attention spans. I think ADD, not all ADD children, because I have a child that has ADD that did. Not ADD isn't meaning all children with that, but ADD can be caused by trauma. There's no doubt about that. If they're starting to struggle. Oh, absolutely. If they start struggling academically. If they start falling down in grades. If they're always in fear, and I think there's physical ones, obviously. Bedwetting, I think is a big one. If they never have, and all of a sudden they are. If they have a distrustful attitude towards any adult. If you notice that they're alone and they can't really develop any healthy peer relationships. A frustration, despair. They always feel like they failed. Those type of things, because I know we're running out of time, but those are just the beginning of some of the things that toxic stress can cause in our children. And, I'll tell you, this has been, I wish we had an hour tonight.
You're right.
But I know we're going to have all month to talk. There's some key takeaways, and I want you to jump in here with me, Dr. Pitts. First of all, to help me with these, but I'll throw out one that if they take anything away from tonight, one is we need to open our eyes and be sensitive to our children.
Absolutely.
The world, when you're a parent, the world no longer revolves around you. The world revolves around that child. And we need to shift the focus from our needs and wants to theirs and include them in that. Another second takeaway I would think is to be sensitive when we see something that is different, that we need to not look down on them, that we need to get down on their level and ask questions, investigate, keep them safe, protect them over and above. Don't just let them go in the room alone. Don't let them go to weekend trips camping anymore with people that you don't know. Those days are long and gone.
Yes.
And I don't know if you have one or not, but I think maybe one more would be to not always solve our children's problems for them. Teach them how to solve their own. If they're angry, if they're stressed, if they're upset, set Jimmy down and go, Jimmy, okay, if this happens again, what do you think the best response would be? And give them tools to be able to allow them to make the right choices in the future if it happens to them again.
That is so good, and it's so poignant. And I agree with everything that you said. The last thing that I would just add is the importance of actively listening. You know, parents have a tendency to be judgmental and critical of their kids. You know, what's wrong with you? Children have to feel safe. They are not going to open up and talk if they don't feel safe. So be deliberate and intentional in listening actively and providing that safe space for your kids to open up and talk to you honestly and transparently, and keep your cool. You don't have to fly off the handle and start threatening to kill people, because then that makes them apprehensive about disclosing, right? They need to know that you're not going to go to jail too.
Doctor, in your childhood, what was the loudest time of your evenings at home with your parents? Mine was homework time. My mom and dad yelled at me every night, get your homework done, get your homework done. It's just like, what encouragement comes out of that? I don't understand why we do that to our kids.
Right. Stop all that
I'm
screaming
sorry.
and
Go
yelling.
ahead.
No, you're fine.
That's right.
Just tell them stop all that screaming and yelling. So listeners, I want to leave you with this final thought. Every family has strengths, even when you feel like you don't. Every family has strengths, and every family faces challenges. When you're under stress, the car breaks down, you and your significant other lose a job, your child's behavior becomes off the hook and difficult, or even when the family is experiencing a positive change, such as moving into a new home, or you got to change schools, or you get a new job and you're making more money, whatever the case may be. Sometimes it takes a little extra help to get through the day. Protective factors are the strengths and resources that families draw on when life is difficult. Building on these strengths is a proven way to keep the family strong and enhance child well-being. Listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, and please don't forget to join us next week when we'll be discussing preventing adverse childhood experiences. ACEs, that's a baby.
You will not want to miss that show. It will be awesome.
Dr. Williams, dear sir, my friend, my colleague, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Everyone, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you and good night. Have a great night, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Pitts. Good night.
Good night.